everybody. Since it's a small group, I hope to, maybe use the chat box and make it really, helpful for you individually. Hopefully, these webinars tend to be a little bit generalized because it's hard to know, exactly what you're going through. But today's topic is going to be beating the heat with cancer fighting recipes. So I hope you're ready for that. But if you have specific questions or things you're wondering about cancer and nutrition, please feel free to put them in the chat box. I'm also going to provide my email address at the end. So if I don't get to your question, you can always email me afterwards. So as Maddie introduced me, my name is Saori. I'm an oncology dietitian with Cedars-Sinai. And out of curiosity, how many of you have met with a dietitian before? You can put it in the chat if I can see it. Oh, maybe I can't. Oh, I see the hand raised. Okay. Okay, I see a couple people. Okay, oh, here's the chat box. Okay, you have not. Yes, okay. So it's probably a mixture of both. So, and the reason why I ask is because if you haven't met with a dietitian and you're joining and you have specific questions or concerns, it might be best to ask your oncologist for a referral for a dietitian, especially somebody who specializes in oncology and nutrition, so that they can give you more individualized guidance. But today, what we're going to talk about, why, first of all, nutrition is so important after a cancer diagnosis. And since there's a lot of confusion and conflicting information out there, we're going to talk about what is considered an anti-cancer eating pattern based on the most up-to-date evidence. And we're going to talk about how you can incorporate these cancer-fighting foods more on a regular basis. And of course, we're going to talk about some recipes, in particular salads and smoothies that are, cooling and things that you can customize to your own preference. Now, if you can also put in the chat, why do you think nutrition is important after a cancer diagnosis? It's a really basic question and there's no wrong answer. There are multiple correct answers, but in your perspective, why do you think it's important after a cancer diagnosis? Should always be important. That's true. I agree. To support remission, strengthen the immune system, for best health possible. We don't want to feed the cancer. Yeah, I think those are all correct answers. And let me go to my next slide. So one of the reasons is that malnutrition in various forms is very, very common after a cancer diagnosis. And next week happens to be Malnutrition Awareness Week. So I just decided to put these slides out here. And again, there are different forms of malnutrition, so we'll talk about it a little bit. It might not be evident, it might not be reflective in someone's weight, for example, but we want to make sure we're supporting your needs to boost your immune system, to make sure you feel your best as you go through treatment. And if some people don't mind sharing, is anyone going through treatment currently, or are you done with treatment and in survivorship? Because that can make a big difference too. About to start, okay. And we know that there are your treatment survivors, so it's a mix. And depending on you're supporting loved ones with cancer, so a whole variety of audience today. So again, it's really, if I don't get to your specific questions, please let me know. But regardless of whether you're about to start treatment, you're in treatment, you're after the treatment, or you're supporting with treatment, we know that nutrition is important, and it might look different for depending on the stage of your journey. So the reason why malnutrition is so common is because you probably know that a cancer diagnosis, the cancer itself, or the treatment can cause a lot of symptoms and side effects. So here are a few common ones. I'm not sure if you can relate to some of them. It can be unintentional weight change. It can be, changes in your appetite. Fatigue is a very common one, even for survivors. If you're in treatment, nausea can be common. For some people, taste change, dry mouth, mouth sores. Depending on your diagnosis, maybe difficulty swallowing or chewing, and changes in the bowel pattern can be common, and it can be a chronic problem, constipation, gas, bloating, diarrhea, things like that. So most of these things can contribute to a different types of malnutrition. And of course, if you're not malnourished, it's difficult to tolerate the treatment and recover in between treatments. So we want to make sure you have the best support. Now, like I mentioned, an oncology dietitian is one of the best people to support you when it comes to nutrition. So wherever you're getting treatment or wherever your loved ones are getting treatment, hopefully your oncologist knows an oncology dietitian that you can connect with. So what we do is to optimize your nutrition status before, during, and after treatment. So wherever you are in the journey is the right time to contact one. And if you find that just one quick assessment is enough and you're doing well, that's great. But sometimes as you go through the treatments, your nutrition status changes and you might need a follow-up. What we do is to provide evidence-based recommendations specific to your needs. So looking at your diagnosis, looking at your treatment plan, and making sure we are distinguishing between cancer nutrition myth and what's evidence-based. And I think that's really important. Because there's a lot of fear around food too. Like somebody mentioned, nobody wants to be feeding cancer. We want to be doing our best, making the right food choices. But also sometimes, the fear is unnecessary. It could be, foods that are nourishing, but because of what's in the media or what you may have heard, people are overly restricting. And that can be a concern too. That can lead to malnutrition as well. And like I mentioned, nutrition-related side effects that I showed in the previous slide, those can very much be either prevented or minimized if you follow certain strategies. And other things we talk about often, supplements. People often have questions about supplements. We want to be careful about supplement use. So, you can go over that with your dietitian. If you are on a therapeutic diet, if you have any pre-existing condition like diabetes or kidney condition or heart problem, your diet might need to be adjusted, not just looking at the cancer diagnosis. And occasionally, we do help people on tube feeding, IV nutrition, things like that. But after you're done with the treatment, we want to, of course, continue to make the right choices so that you reduce the risk of cancer occurrence or recurrence. So if you can put in the chat, what do you think is considered an anti-cancer eating pattern? What does that, what do you think that looks like? Primarily whole foods, yeah, I would agree with that. Green veggies, yeah, I think that should definitely be included. Fruits and veggies, I would agree with that too. And we want to be careful too, right? Sometimes I get patients who are so focused on fruits and veggies, they forget the other things because you need the protein too, right? You need the healthy fats, you need the healthy carbs. It needs to be balanced. No to little refined sugars, I would agree with that too. Organic fruits and vegetables, whole grains, fish, nuts, I would agree with that. The current evidence doesn't say that you have to eat organic. There are definitely benefits to choosing organic. But the bigger concern, if you look at the data, is that the majority of Americans, about 80%, are not meeting their fruit and vegetable intake. They're not getting enough fiber. And when it comes to, the pesticide content and things like that, those are regulated in the US, even for conventional produce. So the current consensus is that, eating more fruits and vegetables is more important than choosing only organic. So meaning if people are so scared of conventional produce and they're not eating fruits and vegetables, that can potentially cause more harm than good. But of course, if you choose organic, if you are able to, that's a completely reasonable choice. No alcohol, dairy, we can touch on that later if we have time, but no alcohol is correct. Some people don't know about the relationship between alcohol intake and, the increased risk of cancer occurrence. So I do also agree with that. If people have a difficult time, stopping alcohol, the recommendation is no more than 1 drink for female and no more than 2 drinks per day for male. Okay, so kind of in line with what you all mentioned, the current evidence, and we want to look at as much data as possible, and we want to look at these leading organizations led by world-class researchers. When they look at the biggest data over decades of information, they do consistently see benefits eating more whole foods as opposed to ultra processed foods, which is a little bit intuitive, but we also have to be realistic. So certain level of processing can be reasonable if you want to choose, for example, like canned vegetable or frozen vegetables. Those are processed, but they're minimally processed. And let's say you don't have a good appetite, you're going through treatment and you're losing a lot of weight, and all you want is, I don't know, something that's a little bit processed. Eating a little something can be better than not eating anything and just losing your weight, your muscle mass, etc. So we might have to shift our priorities as needed, depending on how you're feeling, what you're going through. But if you can, the recommendation is to eat more plant-rich diet. So that can look like, that can look different for many different people. It doesn't have to be an American Western diet. It can be, Asian, ethnic, African, Middle Eastern, doesn't matter. As long as you're getting the protein in, whether it's plant-based or maybe some kind of lean animal protein, and then colorful fruits and vegetables and fiber-rich whole grains, if you can tolerate it. Because remember, some people cannot tolerate high fiber foods for different reasons. If you're having diarrhea, you might have to avoid insoluble fiber. If people are at risk for bowel obstruction, then you might need to avoid fiber. So fiber is good in general, but not for every single person. And you may have seen these pictures before, just transitioning from a sad standard American diet to whole food plant-based diet is the recommendation. So basically we want to be adding more whole foods and colorful plant foods if it's not the case already. And this one too, I shared, if you joined the webinar last year, I like this, this little chart because it shows different mechanisms that we all have in our body. So our bodies are constantly trying to get rid of mistakes in our cells. There are different mechanisms and there are different nutrients to support those mechanisms, whether it's, trying to fight inflammation, correct DNA or reduce the risk of cancer spreading, which is angiogenesis. So you want to have a variety of foods with these nutrients. And then we don't have too much time to talk about supplements today, but avoiding supplements, high dose supplements that don't seem to have the same effects as whole foods. And yes, you can get a copy of these slides. If you can email me at the end, I'm happy to share it with you. So having a variety of whole foods is ideal. If you feel like you eat healthy already, just look for things that you might not be getting on a regular basis. Let's say you eat a lot of fruits and vegetables already. Maybe there's some go-tos that you always go to. Are there colors that you're missing? Are there, new seasonal fruits or vegetables that you want to try? Just try to get a variety in, and even cooking methods too. Some fruits and vegetables are better raw versus cooked. So it's good to get a variety in. And this one, I'm not sure if you've seen this before. We do want to take a step back and look at it in a holistic way, because it's never just about nutrition, right? It's about staying physically active if you can. It's about, choosing more whole foods and plant foods, but also limiting, some people mention like alcohol, sugar sweetened beverages, processed meat, especially. If you do like red meat, limiting to no more than 18 ounces per week is the current recommendation. And when it comes to fast foods or processed foods, minimizing those as much as possible, especially things that are high in sugar, fat, salt, things like that. And then there's a specific recommendation to not rely on supplements for cancer prevention. And I'm not sure if anybody has seen some of the studies that show the risk of increased cancer with certain supplements, but that's certainly the case. And there's also a lot that we don't know. So if you have any specific supplement questions, that's another good reason to reach out to a dietitian as well. And there are many studies that show that following these recommendations, so ACS stands for American Cancer Society, AICR stands for American Institute for Cancer Research, and World Cancer Research Fund is the global organization that's connected to AICR. But when people do follow these recommendations, they do see a positive outcome. So in this one example, one study that came out this year, when they looked at high-risk breast cancer patients, they looked at over 1,000 patients. Those who adhered to these recommendations the most, they had reduced risk of recurrence and also mortality. And in small print, he also talks about not smoking and avoiding other exposures to environmental toxins, etc. So, and some of these things you might know already. So let's think about practically, how can you incorporate more cancer-fighting foods? Because all the participants here, I think you're all at a different place. Maybe some of you are eating very healthy already, and you feel like maybe there's not much you can do, or maybe you're just getting started. This is all new to you. So what are some ways that you feel like you can include more cancer-fighting foods? Yeah, there's a question about recurrence, reduced hazard of recurrence compared to maintenance therapy. So really, it's not, it's not comparing standard of care versus nutrition. It's more of complementary. It's a supportive, nutrition plays a supportive role. It's not an alternative way. If we get there eventually, that will be nice, but we're not there. That's why, at Cedars-Sinai, we have all these medical oncologists, radiation oncologists, et cetera. And we have a whole department of supportive staff. So that includes the dietitians, even spiritual care providers, social workers, pain management doctors, et cetera, psychiatrists, to support the patients as they go through the standard of care. So this is not a replacement, it's to support what you're going through. So since there are no answers, I'm gonna move forward, how we can incorporate these cancer-fighting foods. So first, like I said, I think all of you are at a different place. So I want you to assess your needs and think about what might be missing from your eating pattern. I think there's a reason why you're joining us tonight. I think because you're interested in nutrition and optimizing your health. So, I'm sure you're doing things already to optimize your nutrition, make the right food choices. What are some obstacles? Are there specific needs that, that you're trying to fill? For example, are you feeling fatigued? Or do you feel dehydrated? Do you feel like you're not getting enough fruits and vegetables? What is it, that will hopefully make you feel better? And it is important to focus on the big picture and not to stress too much on, let's say, a specific meal or a specific occasion, because, for example, this image on the left side, you see like pizza and hot dog and cake and hamburger and a juice. It's not something I recommend to consume on a regular basis, but if you consume these things occasionally, is it gonna hurt you? Likely not, because if you're eating healthfully most of the time, there is room for a little treat and comfort food as well. Okay, yeah, incorporating more fruits and vegetables in your diet could be your goal. Okay, and we know that for any kind of successful successful way to implement a nutrition goal is to stick to only a couple and master them. So start slowly, pick 1 or 2 goals to work on, and it's better to be as specific as possible. So, if you want to incorporate more fruits and vegetables, um, what meal, what type of fruit and vegetables are we talking about? Does that mean you're going to try to eat like 3 pieces of fruit in a day? And how are you going to do that? Maybe one for breakfast, one for like after lunch, and one for dessert after dinner or something like that. Making it as specific as possible makes it more likely that you're going to stick to that goal. Cut down towards eliminating sugar. Yeah, I think a gradual cutting down, I think that's a good idea. And for you, if it's about added sugars, a good place to start would be to look at nutrition facts labels, right? It's surprising how much sugar is hidden or evident. If you look at like a bottle, even a small bottle of Coke or something, it's like 50, 60 grams sugar. That's a lot. The current recommendation is to limit to less than 10% of your total calories, and that's for the general public. And if you want to be a little bit more strict, the American Heart Association recommends to limit to no more than 6%. So depending on your calorie needs, you can do the math. So let's say you need 2,000 calories per day. And if you're trying to be more on the conservative side, 6% of that is going to be 120 calories coming from added sugars. And keep in mind, added sugars, there's a difference. We're not talking about fruits or yogurts. I'm talking about like plain yogurts or milk that have naturally occurring sugar. I'm talking about things like table sugar, brown sugar, honey syrup, etc. So 120 calories looks like, let me see if I'm doing this right. 2,000 calories, 6%. Yeah, so that looks like 30 grams of added sugars per day. That would be 6% of your total calories if you are somebody who needed 2,000 calories per day. So caffeine we'll talk about later. Caffeine is fine. It depends on where it's coming from. For example, coffee has antioxidant, but I wouldn't necessarily recommend to start drinking energy drinks or something like that. So it depends on where the caffeine is coming from. If you have diarrhea, caffeine can exacerbate your symptoms. So something to keep in mind. And another thing to keep in mind when you're trying to incorporate more cancer-fighting foods is to really honor your preference and choose convenience, because we want it to be as easy as possible for you. So, I had a patient who wanted to introduce more omega-3 fatty acids to their diet, but one of the top 3 things she hated were like anchovies. So she doesn't have to introduce anchovies. There's so many different options. How about salmon? Maybe not sardines for her. How about plant-based things like walnuts or chia seeds? So you don't necessarily have to force yourself to eat things that you really don't enjoy, because multiple foods can offer similar nutrients that you're looking for. And especially if you're going through treatment or even as a caregiver, there's so much energy that you're expending already. So there's no need to make it more difficult than it needs to be. So sure, cooking all the time is, that could be nice, but it's not realistic for a lot of people. Maybe they don't have the time or the energy. So, there are many things you can prepare that are simple, quick, but still offer those cancer-fighting benefits. And keeping track of your progress is really important, because after this webinar, you might think, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to, cut down on my sugar intake. I'm going to increase my fruit and vegetable intake. But if I were to meet with you a month later, maybe, who knows, unless you're keeping track, unless you're being mindful, you might not make too much progress. And also, we don't want you to be too hard on yourself either. So celebrate any little wins that you might encounter and identify your specific barriers. What's making it difficult for you to achieve those goals, and, kind of adjust your goal if needed. And again, seek support from people like your dietitian or the rest of your medical team if needed, especially if you have the symptoms that are making it difficult for you to eat, whether it's like your nausea is not controlled, you're very constipated, you have uncontrolled diarrhea, things like that. Now we are gonna move to the recipes. So since it's still a little hot, I wanted to focus on something cool like salads and smoothies. And I just wanted to start out by listing some of the most hydrating fruits and vegetables. Regardless of whether you're in treatment or done with treatment, hydration is also very, very important. So, these are just some. Most of these are over 90% water. So watermelon you probably know about, but most fruits are very hydrating unless you're picking like dried fruits or something like that. But vegetables are very hydrating too. Things you might not even think about, like cabbage, cauliflower, mushrooms. We don't necessarily think of them as hydrating, but they can be. You'll notice when you cook, right, how spinach shrinks. And so including these things like in salads and smoothies can be very helpful for hydrating, and it will help you cool down as well. And so before I get to the recipes, I wanted to make sure that it's customizable because you might not like my recipe. You might like different ingredients and things. So I'm going to talk about how to build a salad with cancer-fighting ingredients and also how to make a smoothie with cancer-fighting ingredients. And I only listed a few examples of each category. So for example, for the salad, you do want to introduce some kind of dark leafy greens, and I listed why. So things like spinach, kale, and romaine lettuce, they do contain something called folate. Folate, you might hear about it. It's like in things like prenatal vitamins, but it's also very important for somebody going through treatment, for example. If you tend to be anemic, if your hemoglobin's a little bit low, you do want foods rich in not just folate, but iron, B12, foods rich in vitamin C. Folate is really important for DNA synthesis and repair, so it helps to recover the cells as you go through treatment or if you're in recovery. And source of protein, of course, with a salad, you don't want a sad salad with just plain vegetables. You want protein that's gonna help, maintain or build your muscles. And for that, just listed a few. If you do like whole soy foods, those are considered safe and potentially protective, even for hormone positive cancers. If you have any questions about that, you can ask me, and there are many great up-to-date resources. Whole soy foods offer something called isoflavone, and they can regulate the hormones in your body in the right way. So if you like things like tofu or edamame, that can be a good source of protein. Salmon and sardines are just a couple of fish options that are high in omega-3, and we know those are anti-inflammatory. And beans, lentils, and peas also, they're plant-rich protein, and they offer folate as well. And so now that you have your dark leafy greens of your choice, a protein of your choice, and feel free to use whatever protein that you like. If you want tuna, if you want chicken, that's fine too. And what other colorful fruits and vegetables can you add to the salad? Just listed a few. You may have heard that crucifers or cruciferous vegetables have a lot of cancer-fighting properties. So those are typically things like vegetables in the broccoli family, or the cabbage family, or the radish family. And they offer something called isothiocyanates, and they detoxify carcinogens or cancer-causing agents, and they induce cell death in mutated cells. So we want that. We want to incorporate cruciferous vegetables as much as possible, but keep in mind, if you tend to be gassy or bloated, then we want to either avoid them or introduce them slowly. And you might want to start with cooked broccoli, cabbage, radish first, so that they're better tolerated. And you may have also heard about beta carotene or lycopene. Those are found in, reds and orange fruits and vegetables like carrots, pumpkins, sweet potatoes, tomatoes, watermelon. Those have a lot of antioxidant properties. They do repair DNA that's damaged. So those are also good to incorporate into your salads. And then don't forget the healthy fats, things like olive oil, flaxseed oil, avocados or the avocado oil, walnuts, walnut oil. Those are good healthy fats to incorporate, and not just for the anti-inflammatory reasons, but they help absorb some of the fat soluble vitamins. So things like beta carotene, you need a fat to absorb the nutrients into your body. So make sure your salad has a little bit of a healthy fat. And this is a sample recipe that I personally enjoy. So instead of a dark green leafy vegetables, I used microgreens. And then for the source of protein, I used like a quarter of burrata cheese. And for the colorful fruits and vegetables, I used some peach and tomato. And for the healthy fat, I like this dressing from Trader Joe's. It's a fig vinaigrette with extra virgin olive oil. And I added ponzu, which is Japanese citrus soy sauce. So it's a little bit sweet, a little bit, tangy. It's very refreshing. And I'll give you the nutrient breakdown. It could be like an appetizer or a side salad. You definitely need something in addition to this, some kind of starch, some kind of, more protein, depending on your needs. But no minimal added sugars, and rich in beta carotene, calcium from the cheese, isothiocyanate from the microgreens, and lycopene from the tomatoes. Now moving on to building or making a smoothie with cancer-fighting properties. How many of you regularly consume smoothies? A lot of my patients like smoothies, either for breakfast or, just a pick-me-up 3 times a week. Okay. Yeah. And occasionally, it can be a really good way to stay hydrated. And people have a different preference, but I just wanted to highlight a few options. Plant-based protein powder. Yes. Pea protein. Yeah. So we'll get to the protein and I'll go over that. So liquid base, some people use water. Some people use regular dairy milk. Some people use non-dairy milk like oat milk, almond milk, cashew milk, etc. The reason why I didn't list the oat milk, almond milk, etc., there's nothing wrong with them, but it just depends on what you're looking for. There's nothing wrong with using water, but if you're somebody who's looking for certain nutrients, like if you're trying to get more protein or calcium or vitamin D, it's a good, it's helpful if you use something like dairy milk or fortified non-dairy milk. And then there's pea protein milk too. There's Ripple, if you've seen that in stores. And if you're somebody who's looking to add more probiotics, then you can use something like kefir or kefir, as some people say it. It just depends on your calorie needs, depends on what you're looking for. A lot of people in survivorship, they do need to keep your bones strong. So calcium could be something that a lot of patients are looking for. So that's why I included that. And source of protein, some people like using protein powders. And so, either 100% whey protein isolate that's absorbed really nicely. So for the plant-based protein, there's so many different ones, not just pea protein, but there's even like rice protein and things like that. I would say, Unguri has a plant-based protein that dissolves nicely and it's not too bulky. A lot of people use Orgain protein powder. I would look to see what else is added and the volume of the powder, because sometimes the serving size is so big and it's so grainy or gritty and it's not very palatable. And if you don't like the protein powder, you can always use like the ready to drink shake, like from Orgain or Kate Farms or something like that. And you can always add your own ingredients if you want to. You can toss in your fruits, a handful of greens, etc. And if you don't want to use a powder, if you want to do more whole foods approach, then things like Greek yogurt, that's very high in protein, natural nut butter like peanut butter, meaning there's no added salt or sugar or anything like that. Those can be a good source of protein. And then the thing to keep in mind about something like pea protein, a lot of people do tolerate them well, but if you have a sensitive stomach, some people do get like the gassiness or the bloating, stomach sensitivity, because peas are high in fiber. So similar to the salads, I also wanted to include colorful fruits and vegetables that we want to add to the smoothies. And these are just a few. I'm sure you have your favorites that you like. Berries, we know that they're full of anthocyanins. Spinach or kale, they offer not just folate, but other, spinach actually offer carotenoids, which we usually associate with like orange vegetables. It's just hidden in the green pigment. but spinach also has carotenoids. And kale also has calcium in it, and carrots if you like, but there's no bad fruit or vegetables as long as they're fresh and well washed, fresh or frozen or even dried fruits. You can experiment. If you want a little bit of sweetness, people use things like dates or ripe banana without having to add any sweetener to it. And again, you do want some healthy fats if you want to absorb the fat soluble vitamins. So those would be your vitamins A, vitamins E, vitamins D, vitamins K. Those are fat soluble vitamins. So if you consume them without any fat in your meal or smoothie, then you have a difficult time absorbing it. So make sure you do have a little bit of healthy fats. Are carrots better cooked for the beta carotene? So cooked or raw is okay, but it's more important that you are consuming it with a healthy fat. So if you want to cook it with a little bit of olive oil, that's fine. If you want to, but if you do just simple carrot juice, and if you're not eating anything with it without any healthy fat, you're not absorbing as much nutrients as you could be. So healthy fats in a smoothie could be something like natural nut butter. People often use ground flaxseed. Ground flaxseed, chia seed, hemp seed, avocado, etc. And here's a sample recipe using kefir. So I used low-fat unsweetened kefir, and that has 8 grams of protein already, and a handful of baby spinach, which is less bitter, half a banana for the sweetness, some kiwi, strawberries. Kiwi and strawberries and other berries, they are high fiber and they're good, but kind of going back to the high fiber diet, that might not be appropriate for some people. If you tend to have a lot of diarrhea, if you are at a risk for bowel obstruction, then it would be good to limit those. And then for the healthy fat, I did triple, so the ground flax, chia, and hemp seeds. So these are my dogs, Potato and Pua. And that's the end result of the smoothie. So it provides almost 300 calories. So it depends on what you're looking for. Maybe that's good enough for breakfast. Maybe that's, a good snack for you, but no added sugars. It has a lot of protein, good amount of protein, a lot of fiber, 9 grams. The recommendation is to have at least 25 grams per day. So that's more than a third of what you need in a day, and lots of different vitamins, calcium, probiotics, omega-3, etc. And I'm not sure if you're familiar with these websites and cookbooks, but just a few. AICR, or the American Institute for Cancer Research, does have a lot of recipes with lots of cancer fighting ingredients. Cook for Your Life is also specific for people affected by cancer. Lots of great recipes. And the last 2 are cookbooks. Rebecca Katz has one, and also American Cancer Society has a cookbook. My friend gave this book to me, and it's pretty good, What to Eat During Cancer Treatment. So just to, sum up, focusing on nutrition after a cancer diagnosis can really help you feel better and stronger, whether you're in active treatment or you're in recovery. And I think most of you knew this already, but to follow an anti-cancer eating pattern, try to eat more whole grains, vegetables, fruits, and legumes that you like. Make that a major part of your diet. You don't necessarily have to become vegan or vegetarian. They don't have to be organic unless you prefer it that way. And to incorporate more cancer-fighting foods, add a variety of minimally processed plant foods that you enjoy and that are easy for you. That's it for today. I'm happy to take any questions or comments that you might have. I do see the best